All right, so let's look at some housing issues now. I mean, the issue of the housing backlog in South Africa is nothing new, and the Local Government Residential Property Development Summit looking at some of the issues in this sector, hopefully not only to discuss, but to find some solutions to the real challenges that continue to plague the housing sector, in fact, human settlement sector, 30 years on. Let's chat about some of the reflections now and where to from here with SALGA Specialist on planning, land and rural development, Zanoxolo Futwa. Thank you so much, Mr. Futwa, for your time. I mean, while this is a moment to reflect 30 years later and see how things have gone, let's briefly ponder on some of these successes when it comes to, you know, the Human Settlements Department and the provision of housing in South Africa.
Thank you very much. Yes, we held a two-day session in Kempton Park from yesterday to today, focusing on the property development market, and we took a decision to try and focus it even further to zoom into the residential property development market. This is an event that was collaborated by partners, SALGA, the national government, as well as property developers and the National Treasury.
And when it comes into, I mean, some of the challenges that continue to plague this particular sector, there's a myriad of them, and sometimes urbanization becomes one of the issues as well. And I'm going to get there in just a moment, but the issue of the housing backlog continues to be one that, you know, tops the headlines most of the time. And I wonder, in these particular talks that you've had, how much of a reflection was also made in that particular regard?
We did have very good conversations on that. Yes, we still have high backlogs for housing, and particularly developing more than just a house, but settlements that are integrated, that enable the functional economies in our cities and towns. We do recognize that we've come a long way as government and as South Africa, having by now delivered houses of just over 4.8 million in the last 30 years. But we still have a lot of people that still require assistance from government. And we also have a number of challenges that are faced by the stakeholders in the value chain of delivering these integrated settlements, as well as particularly addressing the challenge of shelter and homelessness in the country. It's
one thing to then talk about, you know, the challenges of that need to be addressed here, but it's another to know if we do have a reliable database when it comes to the number of people that are still left to be assisted.
We do have information that is constantly being improved. If you look, for example, in the recent statistics, it has helped us with a lot of data that has improved what we had in relation to the numbers of people that are in our cities requiring support with regards to human settlements and housing particularly. We do understand from reading the recent statistics that urbanization is indeed a huge challenge, and there's a lot of people that still are received by our cities and do increase the demand, which is making it difficult as a target for us to be managing this, because it's almost like the target keep moving. We have data that we constantly work on. Yes, there are areas that we can improve on the quality of that data, but yes, it is there. We do know the numbers of people that are in our municipalities through the waiting list processes that we've been managing over the years.
And how much of that is at a national tally then? How much are we talking about here? How many people?
We have been told by Stats SA that an estimated amount of almost like 50% of our population, that is now sitting at about 60, is in our towns and cities, and is only in just about 17 cities or towns or municipalities, which are metros and secondary cities. And of that, we have a large number of people that form part of the backlog in different categories. There's a category that is in informal settlements. There's a category that is in backyard dwelling. There's a category that is unserved, that remains in shelter or tenure forms that are not in line with the provisions of our constitution.
So the issue of, urbanization is something you've touched on, and I want us to get into it because it's a huge one. People are moving, from time to time from their own homes to areas where they think there are employment opportunities, or they want to be close to some of the opportunities in the cities. How much of a concern is this, for the gathering? Because, you look at the issue of land, for example. In some of the instances, there isn't land available to then be able to assist them in terms of building the houses.
Indeed. Land is a big and a huge contributor to solving the problem of homelessness. And land is also a highly contested asset. We continue to work together as government across all spheres, together with our partners, to try and identify suitable parcels of land in our municipal areas through a concerted cooperation program and efforts. There has been efforts to try, particularly in the last few years, to assemble and consolidate available land. You would recognize that we had a process which was also presented at the summit itself, in terms of the amount of land that is in excess of 770 hectares that was assembled by government and redistributed into different needs. The majority of that land went into the need for supporting human settlements and housing. And yes, we do have a challenge of land, but we are working within the constraints of the limited available land. There's also other challenges in unlocking that land, because it's land that does not necessarily belong to government only, and it's land that needs to be unlocked and prepared for purposes of producing a house or a settlement area that is conducive to living, and which requires a lot of resources.
Quite an interesting one, especially as we end off there. It also speaks directly even to the collaboration then, especially when the land doesn't belong to government. How then do you begin to have these conversations with some of the owners there? But thank you so much for giving us a sense of how, things went with this particular summit, because the issue of the backlog, the issue of housing is a huge one as South Africa reflects on 30 years since the dawn of democracy. There was SALGA Specialist on Planning, Land and Rural Development, Zanoxolo Futwa.